Okay, so I think we're live. That's rather exciting. Yeah, hi everyone. Got to remember to look up there. Should I put a post-it note? Why not? Not that it sticks for long. I'll put a little arrow post-it note here. I can't see myself, of course, but hey, at least you can see me and I can remember where to look. That's a good thing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just spend a little bit of time. Brand new software, obviously, inspired by Bernadette this morning, for using this. Give Bernadette a Facebook Live series called 5. So obviously not right now, because you're going to want to know about the top 7 mistakes people make with their Facebook. Go and check out Bernadette's page and watch what she's doing in Facebook Live, because it's extremely inspirational. So I'd like to know if anyone's here or if anyone is commenting. Software, not quite sure how to use it. Oh, hang on. Live with me. So hopefully my daughter at least will join me. Hello. Okay, so what I wanted to do was start talking about the top 7 mistakes that I see people making with Facebook ads. Now, I don't know if you know, but a couple of years ago I started a Facebook ads agency called Clicks and Leads, and it was my goal then was to be ads, but I swiftly realised that not least that if you try and price it so everyone can afford it, you end up attracting people who don't really have any money and don't really have any businesses and don't really have any ad budget, which actually isn't very helpful when you're trying to run Facebook ads. But it is possible to run Facebook ads on a really, really low budget. I know because I've done it myself. And the problem is that people want to test lots of different things and they don't realise that each test is going to need its own budget. So I hope that by going through the 7 mistakes I see when people call me in for consults and say, help me, my Facebook ads aren't working, I can help you work with a very tight budget. And at the end, I'm going to show you, in fact, underneath me at the moment over here we go. You can see a link to register for a Facebook ads masterclass I'm running on Saturday lunchtime UK. And of course, I need to always be aware that I'm 2 hours ahead here in Greece. You can see Greek sunshine behind me. And yeah, so let's get started, shall we? Let's get started about the top 7 things I see when people call me up and say, Nicola, help, my Facebook ads aren't working. First of all, I think the first thing that most people do is they make a mistake before they even start running a Facebook ad campaign. And that is a big mistake is not to get your pixel on your website. There's a little bit of code that you pick up from within your Facebook ad manager or business manager, whichever you've got, and it's called a pixel. And you drop it onto your website and you drop it onto your lead pages and you drop it into your ClickFunnels and you drop it into ActiveCampaign and all those different places that you're creating pages. And the point of getting it on before you even start running your ads is so that you can build an audience of people who visit specific pages. You can actually go into Facebook after you've got the pixel on the page and say, I want to track people who arrive at this specific page. And, you know, yes, you can track the people who arrive at the front page of your website, but I'd strongly recommend that you start creating audiences from people who arrive at key pages, i.e. webinar registration pages, sales pages. Your about page might be a good idea because a lot of people who visit your about page on your website are quite interested. They haven't bounced away from your site immediately. Definitely start creating audiences of people who arrive at your opt-in pages and specifically people who arrive at your opt-in thank you pages. That is quite crucial, as is anyone who arrives at your thank you page after your first sale. Because what you want to be doing is creating audiences out of those people, and then you can create what's called lookalike audiences. And even if you don't have a mailing list or you don't have any idea who your potential future clients are going to be, just by tracking some traffic on some of your pages and then creating a lookalike audience, perhaps with the qualification of something else that they would be interested in. So, for example, I create lookalike audiences out of people who arrive at the thank you pages of my opt-in pages, and then I qualify them with, they also have to be interested in Infusionsoft, ClickFunnels, Magento, what else is there out there? Aweber. So I ask for lookalike audiences that are like the people who've opted in for my free gifts, but who've also got an interest in a specific bit of software that I know only serious people with serious business intent would be using. Infusionsoft really weeds out the men from the boys, as does Magento. And what's the other one? Unbounce, I think. Is it Unbounce? Anyway, so that's what I do. I qualify my potential prospect lookalike audiences with software. You can also qualify them with interests, and in America, I think you can do all sorts of things with income brackets, but I don't think we can do that in the UK yet. So the other thing that you need to do, the reason you need to get your your pixel onto your pages in advance, is because you can start remarketing. So if you're getting any kind of website traffic at all, you can start remarketing to people who have visited specific pages. And even if that's 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 people a day, that is a very effective way to remind them, they've just been to your website. You can even say that. You can say, thanks for visiting. Did you pick up my free report while you were there? So that's really important. And the other thing that is really important about getting your pixel on your pages even before you're ready to start advertising is to set up custom conversions, because when you start ads, now my friend Minesh and I had this argument yesterday. When you start ads, you've got the choice to start an ad campaign optimized for clicks or optimized for leads. And I believe, and I'm actually going to test it this weekend, that you need to get, if you're not getting any traffic on the thank you pages after your opt-ins opt-in, and you're not getting any traffic on the thank you pages after your purchasers purchase, then you haven't got any data for Facebook to build their optimization around, if you like. So it's a really good idea, especially if you are getting a bit of traffic and you have got a mailing list, to start sending traffic through your funnel and create a custom conversion using the URL of the thank you page after opt-in and the thank you page after the first sale. Then when you come to set up your campaigns, your pixel will be seasoned, if you like, with the details of the people who opt in and who buy from visitors to your website or your mailing list, and they'll be able to do an optimization for lead campaign or an optimization for campaign much more easily than if you didn't have any traffic on those custom conversions at all. Now, if you don't, a little bit deep to sell you on the benefit of website pages, lead pages, and any other pages, in your ClickFunnels or whatever software your advertising campaign. Right, the next mistake I see people making is not paying for page likes. Now, there's quite a lot of controversy around this. Some people think that if you advertise, you're just going to get a load of junk likes, and that is correct. Not get very specific about who you want. Now, if you've done what I've said and you've had your pixel running and you've had you're tracking people who go to certain pages in your site, or people who opt in, for example, you can then create a lookalike audience, and you can create a lookalike audience with a qualifying interest, like I said, software. So then when you go to set up a page likes campaign, be very, very specific about the countries you want to start with, the English-speaking countries to start with. For example, America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK and Ireland, unless you're specifically targeting any of the European countries, in which case you're probably pretty safe. If you do anything with, say, South Africa or India or anywhere like that, you're in big trouble, because you're going to get a lot of junk likes, which aren't very helpful. If you've got a page like I have that's got about 3,500 organic likes, which have been definitely grown from scratch and no paid likes going on there at all, then I can then come and I can turn those page likes into a custom audience so that I can make sure I can advertise my posts and my videos and everything to all of the people who've liked my page. But I can also use that organically grown likes audience to spin off a lookalike audience. So that's another way to do it if you don't have a mailing list yet. You could, but you've got a good page as long as it's been organically grown with specifically targeted people. Now, if you don't have any likes on your page, you look a bit like Billy No Mates, don't you? So the best thing to do is to start your tightly targeted likes campaign. So you can, after a while, you can put things like videos on your page and you can boost it to the people who've liked your page. And then you can create audiences out of the people who watch your video through to 50%, 75%, 100%. It's absolutely brilliant. And I would strongly advise you don't just ignore the page likes, especially when you're starting out brand new with Facebook advertising. If you've got, say, a £5 or £10 a day campaign budget, I would certainly start by building up your page likes, as long as you do it properly. And in order to do it properly, you have to use, here's another mistake I haven't even got on my list. People don't use Power Editor. They just go straight to boost a post or something like that, or promote this page. And that doesn't give you the targeting capabilities that you get if you use Power Editor. Much, much better. So what I would do is, I'm going to have to slip that in because I don't like eights. No, we can't have eights. Don't. Well, you know, it's true. Got to have 7. It's got to be an odd number. but that is another mistake. Okay, so we'll call that. I can't remember what we're going to call it now. I've lost my thread completely. Oh my God. Okay, moving on to number 3. A big mistake I see people making, and they always end up saying, Facebook ads don't work for me, is they throw a small amount of money at it and they only run it for a week. Now, where do I start with this one? You can't just throw a small amount of money at it for a limited amount of time, because Facebook gets cleverer over time. You have to let your campaign run a bit. Much better to start with a smaller daily budget and let it run longer term than it is to throw all your cash at a 1 week or a 3 day or whatever. Yeah, that's another mistake, sort of related mistake. So we'll call it 3A. People expect to be able to get a campaign up and running in 2 days flat. I mean, no notice whatsoever for a webinar or something. It can be done. It can be done if you know your audience, but it cannot be done if you're starting from scratch. You need something to get going and to give Facebook a chance to get better. And that's another thing. People panic when they see the cost of their clicks, and they panic when they see the cost of their leads. It gets cheaper with time, but not if you're only running it for a week, and not if you're only putting 20 quid behind it. So don't think that what you start off on day 1 paying for your clicks and leads is what you'll end up paying at the end of the first week or even the end of the first month. I mean, I've got one client who I've been working with for about a year or so now, and her clicks and leads were a bit expensive in the first week. They came down dramatically, and they've been coming down ever since. And we've got her down to, I think we've got her down to a click cost of 11p and a lead cost, it might even be cents, and a lead cost of something like 18 to 22p. So she's getting thousands and thousands and thousands of new leads on a daily budget of about 30 quid a day. So it can be done, but you need to be patient, and you need to follow the rest of my instructions so you don't make the rest of the mistakes. The other 5, 6, no, or 7 minus 3, 4 mistakes I'm going to cover. Well, at least it's real. I know I'm real. Do on my fingers. Okay, all right. So that was mistake number 3. Mistake number 4. Now, this is the big one. And I see this even in people who've been through my training course. Oh, my God, it drives me absolutely crazy. I make a big deal out of this, and it was how I was taught, and it works like a dream. And it works like a dream for so many different reasons. They don't separate out their ad groups. Right, the trick is you've got a campaign which is geared for either traffic or optimized for leads or optimized for sales. Okay, so that's your campaign level. Under your campaign level, you've got your ad groups. Now, your ad groups is who you are targeting. And I like to put 1 ad in each ad group. And there's several good reasons for that. One is that you can see at the ad group level when you're looking at your reports which ads are working and which ads aren't. And I label my ad groups with what it's designed to do, i.e. Facebook ads report, what the creative is, so NC pick 1, NC pick 2, NC pick 3, whatever. Then I put in what the interest group I'm targeting is, or whether it's an audience, a specific audience. So I might say NC like Fusionsoft qualifier, and then I desktop or mobile or right hand side or Instagram, so it'll be mob or DTO, and then I put in which country, so UK. If I'm showing it in all the main English-speaking countries, I'll put all main, and then I can see at a glance then, with one ad in each ad group, what's winning, which ads are winning. At the ad level, I identify them when I'm looking at them in an ad list, but I usually do most of the weeding out work at the ad group level. So that's one mistake. People don't do that. Even people who've been through my course, they just try and skip, cut corners. And I'm a really big picture kind of thinker, so I'm really amazed that I can actually get down to this level of granularity. But this is how I was taught, and it really, really works. Doing is throwing lots of interest groups together, or audiences and specific interest groups. And what you've got to do is you've got to have one ad in an ad group, and you've got to have just one interest group, for example, or in that ad group. Now, if you're split testing images, this is another really important thing to do very early on. Split test about 3 to 5 images, but to make sure each image is in an ad that's in a separate ad group to the others. Otherwise, you're never going to be able to tell which image is working. Excuse me. And I just see this all the time. Whenever I go in, the other thing people do is they mix up different images and different copy. So if they've got 3 images and 3 different kinds of copy, I think it makes something like, I don't know, 3, 6, 18 variations. I mean, don't quote me on the maths on that, because I don't know if that's true or not. But you've got to keep, I always go in, ad copy is the last thing I test. It's one of the last things. Buttons are some of the last things I test. I like to test, especially on a limited budget, I like to test the things that make a big difference first, and the images are certainly one of those. The other thing is I like to split test straightforward images against images with, in fact, I've given up using images with banners on or words on at all. I just like to make it look as much like a post as possible. So I'll have copy, and I'll have a big fat picture, which is eye-catching and arresting. And then I will have the headline underneath about what they're going to get if they come and put the email in. And then there's usually a download button or a learn more button. I mean, these are the kind of things you would test further down the line. Split test the images first, split test the interest groups. So once I've got an image that works, I will then split test, say, 3 to 5 interest groups. But each one of those will have their separate ad group, okay? So that's the biggest, worst offence I see. And the other reason for doing that, not only is it really good for showing you which ads are winning at the ad group level, so you don't have to keep going in and out and in and out. It's really good when you want to start scaling up, because you're only supposed to scale up when you get a winning ad by tiny percentages increments every day. Now, you can see that if you've got 10 to 15 to 20 ad groups and you're scaling up each one by 20% a day, it gives the Facebook pixel or magic or elves or whatever it is does it, time to go out and scurry about and find the kind of people who are like the people who are opting in or buying, whichever you're optimizing for. Otherwise, they'll just throw a load of eyeballs at you. And they won't be the right kind of eyeballs. So you've got to scale up quickly, and it's much easier you've got to scale up slowly, but it's much easier to scale up slowly when you've got lots of different ad groups going, rather than one ad group, which is going to be painfully slow to scale up, say, 20% a day. So when you've got a winning ad, I tell you, you want to scale up quick, because you want to get as many eyeballs on your offer as you possibly can. Okay, how are we doing? I've got one viewer. Brilliant. But the best thing about Facebook Live is it just keeps rolling. That's the thing. What is the other thing? Number 5, the 5th mistake I see people making with their Facebook ads when I'm pulled in for these, oh my God, my ads aren't working, help me, consultations. You're not split testing the placements. You're not. You're just putting them all where you're putting the ads on everywhere, because that's what Facebook recommends. Well, guess what? Facebook recommends is not geared towards you having the best results with your ads, much as they would like you to think that they are on your side. It's geared towards you spending the most amount of money. So what I like to do again is split out into different ad groups, my best performing picture ad with my best performing interest group, or interest or audience from my people who visited certain pages. And then I split test the placement. In fact, I might even start by split testing the placement. I never run anything on anything but mobile to start with. It used to be I only ran things on desktop, but about March last year, about a year ago, the balance shifted and you started getting abysmal results on desktop and only good results on mobile, whereas previously the opposite had been true. Now, I was having a conversation with my friend Minesh about this the other day as well, because he's got an older demographic, a bit like I have. My biggest potential market is 45 to 55-year-olds who want to learn how to get their business going online and how to get traffic to that business online. Well, Minesh's age group want to protect their investments. They're investors, they're canny investors, they're savvy investors, and they are slightly older than my demographic. And he didn't realise they'd all swapped to iPads. He thought they were all still on desktops and desktops and laptops. So his traffic had been gradually shifting, and that's why it's really important to start with testing placements like mobile first, and then if it works on mobile, go to desktop and I'll test that. Your clicks are going to be more expensive on desktop, but your conversions to leads are probably going to be cheaper, slightly cheaper than they are on mobile. It all depends on the product, it all depends on the market. What else can I tell you about this? Oh, right, okay. I don't test right-hand side at all until I've got a winning campaign on either mobile or desktop. And Instagram's another ball game entirely, because the images have to be a different shape and size. And yes, you can run ads to Instagram from your ad editor in Facebook, but I would spin it out into a separate campaign so you've got control over the creative, because it looks very different on Instagram. Facebook ads that I see. Well, so most people don't know how to make reports at all in Facebook, so they just look at on the first page of their ads manager when they go into their ads manager. You've got to learn how to create custom reports, because what you can do then is you can look at how many clicks, unique clicks you're getting, how much it's costing you per click, how many leads. But the next thing you need to be tracking is your next sale, your first sale that people get offered. When they opt in for your free gift, what do they get offered next to buy? And you need to be tracking that, even even at the stage where you're just sending traffic, you're just trying to get clicks to your opt-in page. Because what will happen is you'll end up with some ads that look like they're expensive for leads. They might look cheap for clicks, expensive for leads, and you'll turn them off. Lead ads, if say you've got a list of 10 and you're looking at one, you're going to turn the £3 one off, aren't you? But not if you do it my way, because if you're tracking for your first conversion to sale, you'll know exactly which ad groups, with one ad inside, remember, which ad in each ad group is sending you the sales. That's the most important thing. Now, clicks and leads, we can only guarantee you clicks and leads, because your sales process is the next thing that comes into play here. I can't guarantee you sales, even though I could optimize for sales if you're making some, because I'm completely dependent as the person running your ads on your sales process. It might be that you've got a telephone sales process or an interview process. You might get a new salesman who's absolutely rubbish, and then you'll be blaming the traffic, whereas actually it's the salesman that's pants. So that's the next thing, especially if you're running your own Facebook ads on a tight budget. You want to be tracking your sales very much from the early days, so you don't turn the wrong ads off. What else we got? Right, number 7. Blimey, I'm rattling through these quite quick. Well, I did want to keep it under half an hour. We're nearly there. So you don't know your numbers. That's the last mistake I see people making. They oh gosh, this drives me crazy. Basically, they come to the call about setting up a Facebook campaign and they say, what do you recommend as a budget? So I go through this conversation about having to split test all these different things, and each split test really needs about a tenner a day in the early days to get any data at all. If you can throw a bit more at it, that'd be even better, 20 quid, 50 quid, whatever. But it's a seesaw, it's a balancing act. The more data you want, the quicker, the more you have to spend. The less you've got to spend, the less data you get quickly. So this is why it's really important to know your numbers. You need to know what's the first product you're going to try and sell, what the profit is on that product, and how much of that profit you're willing to spend to get a sale. Because for every sale you get, you should be getting anything from 10 to 100 leads as well. So you're really looking for the first sale of your first product to go as far towards covering your ad costs as you possibly can. And if you're going to outsource to Facebook ads management, the sale of your first 1 or 2 products might have to go towards covering the cost of your ads and covering the cost of the management of those ads. Because you can find people who manage your ads cheap, but they won't be any good, I can assure you of that. So that's what you need. That's why you need a product funnel. You need the first product to cover the cost of the ads ideally, and the first and second products to cover the cost of the ads and the management. And then you need a back end funnel of gradually escalating higher ticket items. And then that way you will know your numbers, and you won't you end up saying to me, okay, so it's going really well. When can I reduce my budget? It's like you're putting £1 in, you're getting £5 out. Why would you want to reduce your budget? But that is the mentality people have got. They want to keep their advertising cost to an absolute minimum. Whereas actually, if you know that you're covering your cost of your advertising and the management of your advertising, if you're outsourcing, then you know that every £1 you put in is going to make you £3, £5, £10, and you know exactly at which stage of your product funnel that's going to happen. That's when you know your numbers, and that's how you know how much you're willing to give away of the profit of those first products. I would say look at 100% on the first one, because that'll mean that you're getting customers, which are incredibly valuable and much more valuable than leads, and you're covering your costs of doing that, which is, it's like the holy grail of marketing, really. So that's what I've got to say about that. You need to know what your profit is on your first products. You need to know how much you're willing to pay to get a lead and how much you're willing to pay to get a customer. And once you know those numbers, you are golden, really, with your Facebook ads. And anything you can reduce your cost per click down, or your cost per lead down, or your cost per sale down under that amount you're willing to spend, then you can, the sky's the limit, really. Okay, so I just wanted to say that if you found this useful, then do come along, and I'm rubbish at this. Register here, because on Saturday I'm doing a Facebook ads masterclass where I'm going to go through exactly how step to step I set up a Facebook ad campaign, when I'm doing it for me or whether I'm doing it for clients. It's exactly the same. And that's at 12 o'clock on Saturday lunchtime, and there will be a recording available. So if you can't make it live, I'm not going to do that rubbish false scarcity stuff. If you can't make it live, come along and register anyway, because there will be a replay available for a short period of time afterwards. I hope this has been helpful. I'd love to hear from you in the comments underneath, and I look forward to speaking to you on Saturday. Bye.